One day, as I returned home from my usual night shift, I noticed that the house lights were on, which was unusual. Lately, my daughter Alethea would only come home when I wasn't there, so it was rare for us to be in the house together. When I opened the door and stepped inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet.
"Stop acting like a thief!"
Maybe it was because I was tired from work, but those words came out before I could say welcome home to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while.
"What? This is my house, too. What's here is mine as well,"
she said, holding a bank statement I had been saving in her name for years.
"Wait a minute, that's something I've been saving carefully to give to you when you grow up. What are you planning to use it for?"
When I asked her frantically, she replied indifferently, "I'm getting married." I had so many questions. Who is he? Where did you meet him? Have you met his family? What about the wedding? But she wouldn't answer any of them.
"You're an embarrassment. Don't come to the wedding. As far as anyone knows, my mom is out of the picture, divorced and gone."
With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me crumbled. I had put her first, always, raising her on my own. My very existence was being denied. I was paralyzed in the middle of the room she had ransacked, but eventually, I realized I couldn't stay like this, and I made a phone call. Months passed, and today is her wedding day. I watched her from the shadows in her bridal gown. I never wanted to see her in such a beautiful dress like this. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. An older, kind-looking man smiled at her. "Are you ready for the plan?" the woman next to me asked, and I nodded firmly. "My name is Francis, and I'm 47 years old. I live alone in a cheap apartment. I used to live with my daughter Alethea, but she left months ago, and we haven't been in touch since. Even though I called her my daughter, we're not related by blood. She's the stepchild of my late husband, David, who I married after both of us had gone through divorces. David had divorced his first wife 3 years before we met because she cheated on him. In a furious custody battle, he won the right to raise Alethea. But the year after we married, he was diagnosed with cancer. Treat her like your own daughter. Be firm but kind. Those were his last words before he passed away. It's been 13 years since then. The only thing left was me and Alethea, who wasn't related to me by blood and who I'd known for less than a year. When Alethea was still in elementary school, I worked desperately to support her. I had children from my previous marriage. But we divorced due to irreconcilable differences. Without my parents' support and as a housewife, I found it hard to raise my children, and custody went to my ex-husband. But now, there was no one to protect her but me. Determined to raise a child properly this time, I didn't slack off on work or house chores. Meanwhile, Alethea barely reacted to me from the time David brought her to our home. I remember the first time I met Alethea, before David and I were married, when he invited me to his house. "Nice to meet you, Alethea." She was a bit younger than my children from my previous marriage. I crouched down to meet Alethea's gaze and spoke to her. However, she only briefly made eye contact before quickly returning to her play. "Alethea, this is the woman I told you about who's going to be your new mother." Even though David said this, her attitude did not change. And that was understandable. A young girl, still in elementary school, suddenly loses her mother, and after a while, a new woman is introduced as her mother. It's natural for her to show some resistance. Moreover, after divorcing my ex-husband, I started working at a club. It was at that club where I met David. He came to the club where I was working as a customer and apparently fell in love with me at first sight. He started coming to the club regularly, but David was different from the other customers. He didn't cause any trouble with alcohol like the others, nor did he ever do anything unpleasant. David was always kind to me. Customers like this are rare, and as time went on, my initial wariness turned into a slight guilt for thinking, he's paying good money just to see me. So, one day, I decided to ask him directly.
I'm really glad you come here to see me, but are you having fun? You can enjoy yourself more freely, you know?
Even though I knew that saying something like this might mean he'd never come back, I couldn't help but ask.
No, I come here because I want to see you, Francis. Is that so bad?
David said this, his cheeks slightly blushing with embarrassment. I couldn't believe he was lying, and I was genuinely happy that he enjoyed our conversations so much. Gradually, I started looking forward to seeing David as a customer and eagerly awaited his visits to the club. Several months passed since he began visiting the club regularly.
I want to date you with marriage in mind.
One day, he came to the club as usual, but this time, he brought a bouquet of flowers and said those words. I was surprised by the sudden proposal, but that very day, I decided to quit the club. From the time he began visiting the club, we both knew about each other's past divorces, and I knew that David had taken custody of his daughter. I genuinely wanted to be a proper mother this time. That's the story of how we ended up together. I wasn't sure how much David had explained to Alethea or how much she understood, but I knew she probably didn't think well of me. Even though I had quit the club when we became a couple, club work was still club work. I had come to feel a sense of pride in my job, but I understood that most people wouldn't get it. Still, I wanted Alethea to gradually accept me as her mother, so I was determined to make an effort. However, 1 year later, David passed away. When he died, to support Alethea on my own, I returned to the club I had once quit. From then on, to solidify my resolve to be Alethea's mother, I started calling her Allie.
Allie. It's dinner time.
When I first called Alethea Allie, she looked surprised for a moment. But that was her only reaction, and my plan to get closer to her as a mother didn't seem to touch her heart. Alethea, who had already struggled to fit in at school, completely stopped attending after David's death. However, after starting junior high school, Alethea began to stay out all day and night, hanging out with friends I didn't know where she met. She never consulted me about anything. As her mother, I gently advised her that what she was doing wasn't good for her, but her resistance grew stronger, and it often turned into arguments. Whenever there was an opportunity, Alethea would say to me, "You're not my biological mother." Whenever she said that, I couldn't say anything more. Indeed, although I had officially become Alethea's mother, we still hadn't become a real family. David's death happened just when we were starting to slowly become a family of 3. Even I didn't know how to spend time with Alethea after suddenly becoming her sole caregiver. Even so, as I began to feel sad about her words, I thought that perhaps I was gradually becoming her mother in spirit. The time Alethea and I spent together at home gradually decreased. Even when she wasn't at home, I felt relieved if I saw signs that she had been there when I returned, thinking, at least she's alive and well today. However, most of the time when I came back from work, she wasn't home, and I often found that money had been taken from my wallet. Even though we are family, that's something I cannot tolerate. When Alethea was home, I gently told her, "If you're in trouble, please talk to me. Don't just steal money from my wallet." But she yelled, "Shut up," and ran out. At this point, I wondered if I would ever be able to build a good parent-child relationship with her. Just before she finished junior high school, there was a day when I came home earlier than usual. Since she was usually asleep at that time, I entered the house quietly. Today too, I quietly unlocked the door and entered the house, only to hear sobbing from the back room. Alethea was crying alone. Even when David died, Alethea never shed a tear in front of me, but now I realized for the first time that she cried alone where no one could see. I listened quietly, trying not to make a sound. Why did Mom leave me? Why did Dad have to die? The new mom didn't listen to me. Even though she rebelled against me, she was still a junior high school student. Both her parents were gone, and the only one left was a mother in name only, with no blood relation. Moreover, having that mother work at a club must have been unbearable. I realized too late what was truly important. I hadn't noticed the chance Alethea had given me. It was one holiday. Before Alethea left, she muttered softly, "Hey, Francis, why don't you quit working at the club?" It was the first time she had said anything about my job. At the time, I didn't understand why she said that. But now I understand. Alethea was giving me a chance to quit working at the club and become a normal parent. Yet I can't quit because I need the money to raise you. Besides, I'm proud of this job now. Responded. That night, Alethea didn't come home. She might have been crying somewhere. If I remember correctly, it was after that day that she started coming home less frequently. I had completely lost my qualifications as a mother at that moment. If only I had thought more about her. I am a failure as a mother. I accidentally voiced my thoughts, and she noticed and ran out of the house. However, I couldn't chase after her. The image of her tear-stained, red face wouldn't leave my mind. I couldn't decide whether chasing her was the right thing to do as a mother or if I should leave her alone. I just stood there, crying alone. As if that day had never happened, our relationship remained unchanged. Alethea stopped going to high school and started working part-time every day, seemingly to avoid being at home. Of course, she never told me where or what kind of job she had. She probably stayed over at friends' houses because there were more and more days when she didn't come home. We're not related by blood. I'm not Alethea's real mother. But David entrusted Alethea to me, asking me to be a parent to her. That worry never ceased for even a moment. I don't know how many times I cried thinking about it. I wished for another chance, thinking maybe I could still make things right. Even so, all I could do was work hard, trying to raise Alethea as a mother. So I never realized I wasn't making time for my daughter as a mother. What was truly needed wasn't money, a clean house, or delicious meals, but time spent together. One day, as usual, I came home after work to find the house lights on, which was rare. By this time, Alethea only came home when I wasn't there, so it was unusual for us to be at home together. When I opened the front door and went inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet.
Stop doing things like a thief!
Maybe because I was tired from work, the first words out of my mouth to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while, were those rather than a welcome back.
What? This is my house too. Everything here is mine as well, right?
She said, holding a bank statement that I had been saving under her name for a long time.
Wait, that's something I was saving to give you when you grew up. What are you going to use it for?
When I frantically questioned her, she coldly replied, "I'm getting married." I had so many questions. Who is the person? Where did you meet? Have you met their family? What about the wedding? But no matter what I asked, Alethea didn't answer anything. It's always been that way. She never tells me anything important.
Just shut up. It has nothing to do with you. Leave me alone.
Alethea was the first to raise her voice.
Wait a minute. It's not right that you don't tell me anything as your mother.
I couldn't help but get angry too, and it seemed like an argument was about to start.
Listen, you're an embarrassment. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't have a mother who works at a club. My mom is supposed to be divorced and out of the picture.
With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me collapsed with a crashing sound. I had neglected myself to raise her all this time. My job was criticized, and I was told there was no such thing as a mother. My entire existence was denied. Alethea probably won't come back home anymore. My role as a mother crumbled away so easily, ending abruptly. I was frozen in the middle of the room that Alethea had trashed, unable to move for a while, but eventually, I knew I couldn't stay like this and made a phone call. Several months passed, and today is Alethea's wedding day. I was watching from the shadows as she stood in her wedding dress. I never wanted to see Alethea in her beautiful dress under these circumstances, I thought. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. Tall, with a kind, mature face, he smiled gently at Alethea. The woman beside me asked, "Are you ready to make your move?" and I nodded firmly. With a composed demeanor, I said, "Excuse me," and entered the room with the woman. Hearing my voice, Alethea and the groom's family turned to look at us. When Alethea realized one of the people entering was me.
"Ma'am, I told you not to come,"
she shouted. The woman next to me replied,
"Excuse me, but are you a staff member of this venue?"
She pretended not to know me. The truth is, the woman beside me was indeed a staff member at the venue and my biological daughter, Johanna. Alethea understood this too and glared sharply at Johanna. Although Johanna was not the couple's planner, they must have met a few times during the preparations. Now, for the first time, the two sisters who had never met were glaring at each other. Even after my divorce from my ex-husband, my relationship with Johanna remained good, with occasional phone calls and meeting once or twice a year. The day Alethea left home, the person I called was Johanna. I told her all about the incident with Alethea on the phone. Even after the divorce, Johanna continued to treat me as her mother. After my divorce from my ex-husband, I worked hard at a job at a club, which I now enjoy, but it was very tough at the time. With my ex-husband having custody, I felt I no longer had the right to see Johanna, so I spent my days just going back and forth between the club and home. Maybe I wanted to forget about Johanna quickly. After being engrossed in club work for a year, I received an email on my smartphone. It simply said, "Mom, I want to see you." She must have gotten a smartphone when she started junior high school, and I knew immediately that the email was from Johanna. I was happy that she still thought of me as her mother despite losing my right as her mother. However, I lacked the confidence to meet her, thinking I didn't deserve it, so I couldn't reply to her email for a while. After exchanging a few more emails, we decided on a date and place to meet, and it was really going to happen. On the morning of the meeting, I was so nervous I couldn't eat breakfast. I was terrified that this might be the last time I saw her. Although I wouldn't say, "Let's cancel the meeting," I was so worried that she might be disappointed. When I arrived at the meeting place, I saw Johanna. Children grow up so fast. Even though it had only been a year, Johanna had grown taller and her hair had grown longer since the last time I saw her. "Johanna." I called her name timidly. When Johanna heard my voice, she turned around and, as soon as she saw my face, she ran to me and hugged me tightly.
"Ma'am."
I felt my grown-up daughter in my arms.
"It's been a long time,"
I said to Johanna, holding back my tears.
"Ma'am, I missed you so much."
Just those words melted away all my worries. We entered the cafe while chatting, and I ordered Johanna's favorite parfait and orange juice, along with my coffee. Johanna talked a lot about her current life. Her ex-husband is still working as usual, and Johanna handles more than half of the housework. Her mother-in-law also comes by regularly to help with chores. Johanna is passionate about cooking and proudly told me that her specialty is meatloaf. Although she divorced her ex-husband, She didn't come to hate him as a person. She believes that her ex-husband will take care of Johanna until she fully grows up. On a whim, I asked Johanna what she thought of me.
After I divorced your father, Johanna, you lost your mother, and I know this past year alone has been really tough for you. I came prepared to hear that I no longer deserve to be called your mother.
As her mother, I shouldn't have been so weak in front of my daughter, Johanna. Yet Johanna smiled and began to speak slowly.
Dad and Ma'am decided to live separately, but that doesn't mean Ma'am stops being my Ma'am. I know that Ma'am cares about me. So let's continue to be mother and daughter in our own way.
Hearing this, I felt that Johanna was an incredibly mature person, far more than I deserved to call my daughter. Despite being such an imperfect mother, she still allows me to be her mother. From that day on, Johanna and I started keeping in regular contact and meeting up often. I gave her birthday and Christmas presents, gift cards, and celebrated her milestones like school entries and graduations. Although our relationship was different from a typical parent-child relationship, I began to believe I could do my best as Johanna's one and only mother. When I decided to remarry, I made sure to meet with Johanna and talk to her. Not only was I getting remarried, but my new partner had children. I was about to become a parent to another child. Of course, this didn't mean I would lose interest in Johanna, but I knew she might feel conflicted. Still, I didn't want to remarry without being honest with Johanna, so I decided to tell her the truth.
If Ma'am can be happy with this, it's fine. But will you stay the same even after you remarry?
Johanna asked anxiously.
Of course.
To ease her worries, I hugged her tightly. Reassured by my words, Johanna gave her blessing for my remarriage. Even after remarrying, my relationship with Johanna remained unchanged. At first, I avoided talking about Alethea, but when Johanna asked me to share about my stepchild, I began to open up. Though Johanna never expressed a desire to meet Alethea, and I didn't want them to meet either, she seemed to enjoy hearing stories and seeing pictures of Alethea. Johanna and Alethea were close in age, and Johanna often gave me advice on dealing with Alethea, knowing my struggles. After graduating high school, Johanna went to technical school and then started working as a wedding planner. Though she became busier after starting her job and we met less frequently, our bond remained strong. After getting the details over the phone, Johanna suddenly asked,
What's Alethea's last name again? How old is she?
She inquired about Alethea's details so suddenly, wanting to know everything. I told her everything I knew, and she said, maybe, and left the room for a moment. She returned hastily, speaking in a loud voice.
Alethea is having her wedding at our venue. My senior colleague is in charge.
Then she added,
As your daughter-in-law, I can't give you the groom's information, but I have an idea.
She said with a gleeful tone. Johanna's idea was to hire me as a temporary staff member at the wedding venue. Is that really okay?
It's my fault for not being able to become her mother in the first place.
I was filled with anger at Alethea, but I also felt inadequate and pathetic, lacking confidence.
You've done enough. Alethea is old enough to be called an adult. We need to be strict this time,
Johanna said, and I decided to go along with the plan. So I appeared at Alethea's wedding in the same suit as the venue staff. Seeing me suddenly appear as a staff member, Alethea was flustered. The groom, Hayden.
Mom? What does that mean? You said you were divorced and had no contact,
asked. Hearing Hayden's words, Alethea stopped glaring at Johanna and hurriedly put on a forced smile for Hayden.
No, it's just, this person stalked me and found out everything.
She made a desperate excuse. Hayden, looking puzzled, said, "We'll talk about it later," and the ceremony proceeded. I participated in the wedding as a staff member until the end. Alethea glared at me and Johanna several times, but I didn't mind. For the past few months, I took a break from my club work to train at the wedding venue and help with other weddings, working as a regular part-time employee. All for this moment today. Hayden's family asked Johanna for an explanation.
We are staff, so we cannot provide personal information. Please ask the bride.
But she replied. Exhausted in body and mind, Alethea completed the ceremony. At the end of the wedding, I said to Alethea,
"Congratulations, I wish you happiness,"
and left the scene. Alethea probably wanted to portray me as a stranger. She didn't give a proper response, only a frustrated expression was visible. Later, Johanna asked,
"How about continuing to work at the venue?"
But I told her, "My current lifestyle suits me," and returned to my club work. With the misunderstandings with Alethea now resolved, I can finally focus on work again, and my sales have been steadily increasing. On the other hand, Alethea found out about her mother's secrets coming to light and even getting married for money, leading to an immediate divorce. Later, Johanna told me that the wedding was far more extravagant than the average wedding. This meant that her marriage partner was quite wealthy. After the divorce, Alethea has been jumping from man to man, looking for someone to rely on, while moving from place to place. If Alethea had sincerely apologized and reached out to me, I would have accepted her as her mother, but it seems she absolutely doesn't want to rely on me. She has never come home or tried to contact me. Johanna and I have kept in touch regularly. Today, we were at the cafe where we reunited after a long time.
Thank you so much for everything with Alethea. I'm a failure as a mother, no matter how old I get.
I confessed to Johanna with a bitter smile.
It's okay. You'll always be my beloved mom. Besides, I wanted to give you this.
With that, she handed me her wedding invitation. My heart leaped at the thought of being able to attend as her mother.
There's no seat for a middle-aged woman here.
Go home. I attended the company party with my mother, Jane. We were having a good time, but then a rude employee named Betty hurled this insult at Jane. To make matters worse, her mother Kate was also acting arrogant. I felt intense anger rising within me, but before I could say anything, Jane spoke up.
"Betty, could you please call the highest-ranking person in this branch office?"
This single sentence triggered the collapse of Betty and her mother's standing. My name is Maria, a 48-year-old company employee. My father passed away 11 years ago, but my mother Jane is full of energy and runs a flower shop. It wasn't always a flower shop, though. She used to be a hard-working company employee. Even after retiring, the company wanted her to stay in some capacity, but she said,
"It's not good for seniors to stay in the workplace forever. I want to take it easy now."
So she retired. Then, wanting to work with the flowers she loved so much, she opened a flower shop. Ever since her days as a company employee, she would heal her heart by looking at flowers during tough times.
Flowers don't talk, and that's what's good about them. They don't say unnecessary things, but they're beautiful. "Just looking at them calms my heart," she would say.
She often decorated our home with flowers and kept flowers on her desk at work. She seems to be enjoying every day now that she has her own shop. On my days off, I sometimes help out at Jane's store. It naturally gives us a chance to spend time together as mother and daughter, which is a great opportunity to communicate. Hearing all this, you might think everything sounds happy, but I'm actually troubled by someone at work. Her name is Betty. She works in the same branch office as me, in the same department. She's a young employee, currently 24 years old. Young people are supposed to bring energy to an organization, but Betty is the exact opposite. She causes trouble for various people and disrupts the workplace. For example, in her first year with the company, she was supposed to accompany me to a client's office for a business meeting. I had other work to do, so I arranged to meet directly at the client's office, but Betty never showed up even when the meeting was supposed to start. I tried calling her work smartphone, but couldn't get through at all, so I apologized to the client and started the meeting. Just when we were about to wrap up the meeting successfully.
Sorry, I'm late.
Betty showed up with a flippant attitude. On top of that, she was holding an ice cream cone in her hand and started licking it. Needless to say, the male employee from the client company had an incredulous look on his face.
Not only are you late, but what's with that attitude?
Even though he was angry, Betty remained unfazed.
Why are you so mad? I was in line to buy the smartphone I wanted. That's why I'm late, that's all.
Of course, there's no way the client would be satisfied with that explanation.
Are you looking down on us?
It only made him angrier. Anyone else would normally apologize, but Betty isn't normal. Wow, he's super pissed. Maybe he's curious about this ice cream? I bought it from a trendy shop that everyone's talking about. I'm definitely not giving it to you. She said something that provoked the client even more, making him even angrier.
I'm terribly sorry. Betty, go home now.
I gave that order.
I came here to work, but this is just a waste of a trip.
And kicked out Betty, who was whining. Afterwards, I desperately apologized to the client and somehow managed to conclude the business deal successfully. Even now, when I think about that time, I can't help but sigh. I never want to go through that again, but Betty doesn't consider other people's feelings. She's caused the same level of trouble multiple times, to the point where we've made it a rule not to let her interact with clients. You'd think someone like this would be fired, but Betty has a powerful ally, which is why she can't be disciplined. That ally is her mother, Kate. Kate is a department head at the head office, and she's had a strong voice within the company since joining due to her significant achievements. Naturally, no one at the branch office can go against her. Even Bob, the branch manager, can't speak up strongly against Kate. Betty takes advantage of this, and whenever something happens,
I'll tell Mom on you.
She makes a fuss, saying. It's also troubling that Kate frequently comes to the office under the pretext of inspections. Betty mainly holds others back, so her work performance is quite poor. I wish her mother and boss, Kate, would scold her properly, but for some reason, it's always the employees around her who get yelled at instead.
Betty worked so hard to get into college. If she's not thriving, it must be because of the bad environment around her.
Kate says that loudly, but she didn't study much as a child and failed her college entrance exams. It seems she studied to take the exams again, but she couldn't focus on studying at all and was unemployed until she was 22. Then she got hired through Kate's connections and became a troublemaker. How do I know all this even though I'm not family? Because Betty blabbed about it herself. At the new employee welcome party, Betty called herself a hard worker.
I studied for an hour every day since I was a kid. Sometimes you need a break, so I took 4 days off a week though.
Betty said that with full confidence, but I think anyone can clear an hour of study a day just by doing homework from school. An employee who went to a college prep school said it was normal to study for 8 hours a day on days off to pass the exams. Betty's amount of studying can't be called hard work.
I failed the college entrance exams in my senior year of high school, but I realized life isn't just about studying, so I did various things to broaden my horizons.
The words themselves are good, But Betty said she'd attend a voice acting vocational school and quit after 2 months, said she'd go to a programming vocational school and dropped out after a month, repeating the pattern of giving up right after starting something. Because of that, time just passed and she ended up not learning anything. But the troublesome part is that Betty feels like she's accomplished something with this. Soon after joining the company,
I attended a computer vocational school, so even difficult tasks are easy.
She used a computer, saying. But what Betty was doing was just using a spreadsheet to calculate sums and averages. It's something anyone in the company can do easily, not something to brag about every time. She makes a simple document.
I did it!
And feels like she's done an amazing job, saying. Even if I want to ask her to do the next task, she won't budge, maybe because she's tired. Right now, making 3 documents a day is her limit, so her work performance is at the bottom. She really fits the term useless employee perfectly. But Betty's outrageous behavior doesn't end there. When I was helping out at Jane's flower shop on my day off, Betty and Kate showed up together. I had a bad feeling something was about to happen.
Welcome.
But for the time being, I greeted them with a smile, saying. Betty made a face as soon as she saw me.
Why are you here? I came to find flowers to decorate my house, but this is the worst.
Oh, you're the employee who ruins Betty's hard work. Get out of here now. Even Kate suddenly hurled abuse at me, so I was fed up, but since they're important customers, I decided to treat them politely.
This is my mom's shop, and I help out on my days off.
I explained that, but the next moment, Betty kicked over a bucket of flowers. Kate followed suit and slammed a potted plant on the floor. That plant wasn't merchandise, but a flower that Jane had been carefully growing.
Why would you do this?
I hurriedly set the bucket upright and rushed to the planter, but the floor was soaking wet, and the planter was beyond repair. Then Betty snickered nastily.
A store run by a nuisance should just go out of business. I just helped bring it closer to closing down.
That's right.
I sense Betty's will, so I did something a bit rough.
After that, this troublesome mother-daughter pair said to each other.
I sympathized. Mom and I have great power together.
But it's no joke. Moreover, Jane, who had finished delivering flowers, came back to the store and was stunned by the state of the shop.
We wrecked the middle-aged woman's store for you. Let's go, Mom. Yes, Betty. I don't want flowers from a store like this, so let's go somewhere else. Bye, middle-aged woman.
The two spat out hateful words and quickly left the store, but Jane and I were left to clean up the mess. While doing so, I explained what had happened, and Jane looked very sad. It's only natural since the flowers she had cherished were damaged.
Those people. If they do something again, we'll need to take countermeasures.
I thought what Jane said was obvious, so I agreed. For the time being, we decided to install security cameras, but unexpectedly, we had a rematch with Betty and Kate. One day, I attended a company party held at the head office. This party gathered not only head office employees, but also employees from all the branch offices. It's quite a grand event, with over 1,000 people attending in total. Only employees are allowed to participate, but I was permitted to go with my mom. The party started around the time I arrived 2 hours before the opening time and finished various preparations. At this party, the president of the head office splurges and provides quite delicious food. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet style, so there's nothing more appreciated than this. Jane may be getting older, but she still has a hearty appetite and loves meat.
It's delicious,
she says while eating roast beef. I'm also very happy to see her joyful face. However, people who ruin this mother-daughter time make an appearance. Needless to say, it's Betty and Kate. Poor people are rejoicing over cheap meat. You shouldn't end up like that, Betty. Hearing such horrible things, Jane and I had our moods ruined. We wished they would go away quickly, but they didn't care at all. Only employees are allowed to come to this party, right? So what are you doing here? Kate voiced that question. There's no seat for a middle-aged woman. Go home. And Betty even declared. Furthermore, with a swift motion, she snatched Jane's plate and slammed it on the floor. I threw away the cheap meat for you. It must be a feast for poor people. Oh, I'm so glad Betty has grown up to be such a kind girl. Betty and Kate snickered nastily while the staff hurried to clean up. With that, I finally reached my limit of patience. Whether she's a boss or her daughter, I'll get seriously angry at them. And I'll make them apologize to my mom. I was about to unleash those feelings of anger, but before that, my mom spoke up. Betty, could you call the highest-ranking person in your branch office for me? Those words triggered the collapse of Betty and Kate's standing in an instant. There's no way Betty would obediently listen to what Jane says. Calling for a higher-up, what a complainer. It's uncool for a senior to say that, so you should stop. Really, it's just as she says. You have common sense despite being young, how admirable. With Kate's encouragement, Betty grew even more confident in her own righteousness. Get lost, you complainer. She barked, her attitude becoming increasingly overbearing. But Jane refused to back down. Instead of spouting nonsense, go and fetch the branch manager right now. She demanded in a firm tone, not giving an inch. Jane exuded an overwhelming presence, creating an atmosphere that made it clear defiance would not be tolerated. Even the brazen Betty seemed to sense this. Huh? Why are you so angry? She asked. Well then, I'll go call them. The branch manager can't go against me, you know. With her thick-skinned personality, Kate made this provocative remark before going to summon the branch manager. 5 minutes later, the branch manager, Bob, appeared on the scene. He was trembling and breaking out in a cold sweat, having heard that his subordinates had caused trouble. I was told that they did something rude. Actually, as Jane explained the situation, Bob's face turned pale and he apologized profusely. I am truly sorry. It's unacceptable for them to treat you with such disrespect, Jane. What? Why are you apologizing so much? You're the branch manager, so you should be taking my side as your employee. Incredibly, Betty yelled at Bob. It was unthinkable for a regular employee like her to take such an insolent attitude towards her superior. While Betty's personality was clearly warped, having Kate by her side likely emboldened her to act so arrogantly. Even so, this situation was bizarre. Jane, too, seemed to notice the abnormality and furrowed her brow. I occasionally hear about the workplace from Maria, but Betty is even worse than I imagined. Huh? Don't butt in, you middle-aged hag. You want me to smash that cup of yours too? As Betty grew even more carried away, Bob's face turned visibly paler by the second. That's enough. Jane is a distinguished contributor who helped establish our branch office. What? What's that supposed to mean? Unable to follow the conversation, Betty stared in shock. This person was able to establish this branch office? That's why I'm telling you to stop with that rude attitude. Bob interjected, cutting Betty off and beginning to explain. Our company used to be a small office in a single room of a building. But when Jane joined us, our performance skyrocketed. She worked tirelessly as the first branch manager when we were setting up this branch. What? She was that good? Betty looked at Jane in surprise. The expression on her face was so crestfallen that I almost burst out laughing.
That was over 40 years ago. She's retired now and runs a flower shop. She doesn't have much to do with the company anymore. But in recognition of her incredible contributions, we send her an invitation to our social gatherings every year. She hasn't been able to attend for the past few years due to various circumstances, but she made it this year. And yet, we've caused this commotion.
Even the usually calm Bob glared at Betty in this moment. After all, he was an adult with a fair amount of experience under his belt. When he got seriously angry, he could be quite intimidating.
I'm the daughter of the section manager. Do you think it's okay to take that attitude with me?
Betty retorted, though she was clearly frightened. But it seemed that excuse wouldn't work anymore.
Leave me out of this. Hurry up and apologize.
Kate, Betty's last lifeline, had become completely cowed and started saying things like this.
Jane is a legendary employee that even the higher-ups at headquarters are considerate of. And when you've been rude to someone, apologizing is the basic thing to do as a human being. Mom, you were making a fuss with me just a moment ago. What was that about?
Betty was shaken to see Kate's sudden about-face. Both Jane and I were stunned by the drastic change in attitude, but Kate approached Jane with an awkward smile.
You're Jane, right? I saw you at a social gathering a few years ago, but your aura is different. It's like you're a different person. Are you trying to say I've gotten old? Well, excuse me for that.
Jane's mood soured completely upon hearing Kate's excuse.
Stop saying stupid things and hurry up and apologize. When you've been rude to someone, apologizing is the basic thing to do as a human being, right?
You're right. I'm terribly sorry. Kate apologized, but Betty didn't seem satisfied with this turn of events.
Mom, aren't you apologizing too easily? I don't care if she's some legendary employee or whatever, she's already retired, right?
It was an extremely rude remark, but I had my doubts as well.
Did something happen between you and my mom in the past? You seem to be afraid of her. What? No, that's not.
Kate tried to make excuses, but it seemed that Jane had noticed something.
Could it be that you're the employee who broke the flower vase? What? I don't know anything about a pink flower vase.
Seeing Kate's reaction, I was convinced that Jane was right.
How do you know the color of the vase? Jane never mentioned anything about the color. Huh? Well, I just had a feeling that Jane might like the color pink, so I kind of assumed.
Kate tried to brush it off with a flimsy excuse, but of course, it wasn't going to work.
This habit of making excuses definitely proves that you're the culprit behind the flower vase incident,
Jane declared, and began to recount the story.
It was back when I was still working at this company. A young Kate got completely drunk at a party. It was my birthday party, but she was yelling things like, "Who cares about the birthday girl, Jane?" She even broke the pink flower vase I had received as a birthday present. How awful! That's not how a working adult should behave,
I remarked, looking at Kate with a disgusted expression. Jane also let out a sigh.
That day, Kate was in no condition to hold a conversation, so we just sent her home for the time being. The next day, she came to apologize, which was good, but she kept making one excuse after another, which only made me angrier. I am truly sorry for what happened back then. You scolded me so harshly, Jane, that I even had nightmares about it for a while.
To think that she would forget about Jane even after going through such a frightening experience. I must have had a look of utter disbelief on my face. Perhaps sensing my gaze.
I compensated for the flower vase, so let's just drop this story.
Kate awkwardly tried to change the subject. Mom, you're so uncool.
I can't believe you're the type of person who changes their stance so easily,
Betty muttered, prompting Kate to glare at her.
I've been covering for you all this time, and this is what you say? Huh? Isn't that what parents are supposed to do? Their children are the most precious to them, so it's only natural to go that far for them,
Betty retorted with a brazen opinion. No matter how lacking in common sense Betty may be, I thought she at least had some affection for her mother. After all, Kate had been covering for her so much on a daily basis, and they seemed to get along well. I had imagined that Betty would have some sense of gratitude, but it seems she's the type to go beyond that. In a bad way, of course. As I looked on in disbelief, Kate finally lost her temper for real.
Is that what you've been thinking all this time? I never thought you were such a heartless child. That's why I'm saying it's only natural for a parent to do that much. I can't muster up any compassion or thoughtfulness, you know? Think about all the hardships I've been through. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to raise you?
It was true that Betty was a selfish person who still couldn't stand on her own 2 feet without relying on her parents. Anyone would find it unbearable to be with someone like this for years on end.
You're not good at studying or sports, and you're always causing trouble at school. Have you ever considered how embarrassed and ashamed I've felt all this time?
Kate continued, showing no signs of calming down. Her fury was unrelenting as she went on. Even after you graduated high school, I spent so much money sending you to all sorts of places, but you couldn't stick with anything. I had no choice but to get you a job through connections. You better pay back all the money I've spent on you. Finally, even Betty's face turned red with rage as Kate started saying these things.
Shut up. If you're going to say that, then I won't rely on you anymore. I can live just fine on my own, Betty shouted back. Fine. Then get out of this house.
They ended up saying these harsh words to each other before storming off in different directions. Bob promised to make sure they properly apologized and faced consequences later, but Jane and I were utterly exasperated with both Betty and Kate. Afterwards, on Bob's orders, they both were kicked out of the venue, so we were somehow able to enjoy the rest of the social gathering. But honestly, I never wanted to spend time with those two again. 1 week later, Jane and I visited a certain branch office. This place was known for being strict about work, and we had come to meet a particular person. However, while being led to the meeting, we heard a scream. The next moment, one of the doors burst open and Betty came flying out, hiding behind me.
I can't take it anymore. Stop that guy.
Betty pointed in the direction she had come from. Then, a large man over 6 feet tall emerged, and I recognized him.
Joe?
This was Joe, an employee who worked as a section manager at this branch. He had previously worked with me at my branch office and was someone I had gotten along well with, a motivated individual who brought energy to the department and was always considerate of others.
Well, if it isn't Maria and Jane. Thank you for taking the time to come all this way. I apologize for letting you see such an unsightly scene, Joe said. What happened? Betty came running over here.
At that, Joe was scary. Betty burst into tears, wailing. However, Joe wasn't the type to corner someone without reason. I figured Betty must have done something, so I decided to go into the room and hear the full story. By the way, Betty was transferred to this branch office the day after the social gathering. This was where problematic employees were sent, and Betty had also come here for re-education.
Telling me to move all of a sudden is seriously annoying,
Betty complained, but since she had been given special treatment until now, I wished she wouldn't complain too much. In reality, she should have been sent here much earlier, but it was only after Kate left that they were finally able to transfer her. The plan was for her to settle down after a week and then properly apologize to Jane and me. However, when we arrived, we stumbled upon this commotion.
Actually, I told her to create documents on the computer and make copies, but she snuck out on her own and went to the nearby convenience store. When I lectured her about it, she started crying, ran away, and sought help from Maria. That's how it unfolded, Joe explained, shaking his head in exasperation. No matter how you look at it, you are wrong.
I sighed, prompting Betty to cry even harder.
My salary has been cut, and I have no motivation at all. Plus, this place is in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to go for fun. This is unbelievable.
You're in no position to complain. You should be grateful they're still employing you when they could have fired you ages ago. Joe scolded her, his patience wearing thin.
At that, I quit. I can't do this anymore, Betty declared. As a company, we don't mind if you quit since you're not being useful anyway.
I blurted out my true feelings, and Joe nodded in agreement.
Sorry, but that's exactly right. This is where employees who have nowhere else to go if they don't work hard are sent. If you say you can't put in the effort here, then you're better off quitting since there's nowhere else for you.
That's horrible.
It's troubling if you try to stop me, but being told so clearly that I'm unwanted still hurts in its own way,
Betty said, showing a complicated expression, but it was just annoying.
Stop blabbering and choose whether you're going to quit or work hard, Jane snapped, unable to take it anymore.
Betty's face contorted as she muttered,
I'll quit.
And it was decided that she would really leave the company. If even Joe, who was known as the Rehabilitation Factory, was giving up on her, then quitting seemed like the best choice.
Before you go, make sure to properly apologize for what happened at the social gathering,
Joe prompted Betty.
I'm very sorry.
She apologized reluctantly. Realizing we couldn't expect anything more from her, Jane and I decided to end things there. We went back home, agreeing with each other that they were truly good-for-nothing mother and daughter. About 10 days later, while Jane and I were handling the work at the flower shop by ourselves, two people wearing hats suddenly entered the store.
Hand over the money! You're not allowed to resist!
Even though they were disguising their voices, I could tell they were both women. Jane and I were startled by the sudden intrusion, but I managed to say, This store has security cameras, you know.
We'll be calling the police.
At that, they started to panic.
Huh? Wait a second. Is that true? Isn't calling the police against the rules?
Hearing their voices, I immediately realized who they were.
It's Betty and Kate, isn't it? Your voices have gone back to normal.
The moment they heard my words, the two figures, who were likely Betty and Kate, became even more flustered, so I was probably right.
This can't be happening. What should I do? Mom. Hey, don't call me Mom. They'll figure it out.
The woman who seemed to be Kate scolded the one who looked like Betty, but that pretty much confirmed it.
Do you want money? Or is this just a prank?
When I asked that,
I mean, sure, I want money, but just making you uncomfortable is enough for me,
Betty responded.
But you should at least hand over like $100. It's called manners.
Kate was spouting nonsense, but I retorted,
I don't want to give even a cent to people who barge in like this.
As I was engaging in this idiotic conversation,
I called the cops from the employee-only area phone. The police station is close by, so they should be here soon.
Jane appeared.
Oh my God! We gotta run!
As Maria and I opened the entrance door in unison, we were greeted by a crowd of 6 pedestrians gathered outside. This was a fairly busy area, and it was only natural for passers-by to become suspicious if we were fiddling around while wearing hats.
Hey, you're criminals, aren't you? Don't try to run away. We'll catch you.
Two energetic young men barged into the store and attempted to apprehend them.
Mom! Help us!
Betty and Kate resisted, but with more pedestrians arriving, they were easily caught. When the police arrived and swiftly put them into the patrol car, it was clear how foolish they had been. Reportedly, the two girls told the police the same motive for the crime as they had shared with me. After being fired from our company, Betty apparently ended up crying to Kate for help. Kate, too, had made a huge blunder at a company gathering of 1,000 people, leading to her demotion and loss of place in the company, ultimately resulting in her voluntary resignation. Unsure of what to do next, she had been holed up at home ever since. The company lamented that they wanted to make her apologize but couldn't get in touch, as she had been ignoring all communication during her period of seclusion. In any case, the two girls, having lost their place, reconciled and decided to stick together. However, they harbored a grudge against the mother and daughter at the flower shop, blaming them for their situation, and committed this foolish crime. We just wanted some money and thought we'd threaten them a bit before leaving right away. We ended up staying longer than we imagined, and things turned out like this. We are truly sorry. Betty and Kate came to the store a few days later to apologize. As there was no harm done and they showed remorse, they got away with a stern warning, but we couldn't help but feel disgusted by them. This happened because of your own actions. Don't blame others and run away from responsibility.
Stop interfering with Maria's life. You're no longer welcome in our store.
Upon hearing our words, we are very sorry. They responded in unison.
Maria works at the same company as me, but she hid the fact that she's my daughter and passed the entrance exam on her own merit. Even after joining, she's been working hard without relying on me. Betty and Kate, it's high time you left her alone,
Jane said in a stern tone.
Betty and Kate, you're too selfish. From now on, learn to be independent without blaming others. Otherwise, you'll always be stuck like this.
Yes. They both replied, hanging their heads, and trudged away. Finally, peace had returned to Jane and me. 2 months later, as I was walking near the park, I caught sight of Betty and Kate arguing loudly.
You're not my mom. Just go wherever you want. Fine, I will. But I bet you can't survive on your own anyway.
They were yelling at each other in such an ugly way.
You're practically living like a homeless person. Why don't you have any money? When we were living a normal life, you used to buy and use brand name products all the time. That was my reward for myself. I spent it all on your education.
From their mention of not having money, it seemed like they were fighting over financial issues. Just when I thought they were being a nuisance in a public place.
Shut up!
A group of 3 delinquent-looking guys shouted at them. We're sorry. They ran away with pitiful voices, but the guys didn't let them off and chased after them.
Hey, don't run away.
The younger one is pretty cute. I want to make her my girlfriend. One of the guys said this, so who knows what would happen if they didn't manage to escape. But if I clumsily tried to help that mother and daughter, it was obvious they would demand money from me. I immediately left the park and returned home. Meanwhile, I'm still working as a company employee. Recently, my past achievements have been recognized and I was promoted to section manager. Although I'm just a branch section manager, my salary has increased compared to before. With Betty and Kate gone, it's become much easier to work and everything is great. Bob also said he wouldn't give special treatment to certain employees, and he's been properly following the company rules. Now that the problematic people are gone, he himself has a brighter expression too. Jane is also running a flower shop and looks happy as always, surrounded by flowers.
This flower is about to bloom soon. I'm sure it will be beautiful.
Seeing her heart dancing like that makes me feel joy too. It's just an ordinary scene, but I'm living each day hoping this happiness will continue for as long as possible. As soon as Thomas saw me, he pleaded,
Please, take care of me.
Why should I do that? I blurted out reflexively. Who does he think he is asking this? When I was hospitalized with a broken bone. It's a no from me. Ask someone else. And who was it who said that? It's your own responsibility. Be grateful you even got help. This is the end of me reaching out to Thomas. I am Elizabeth. 32 years old. Married 5 years ago, with my husband Thomas, our son Anthony, and our dog Max. We're a family of 3 and 1 pet. Thomas works at a major IT company and is very busy every day. Leaving home early in the morning and often not returning until the date changes isn't uncommon. He frequently works on weekends and takes business trips once a month. Thanks to that, Thomas rarely spends time with the family and has almost no memories of playing with Anthony. However, he has risen rapidly in his career, attaining a managerial position in his 30s. We were able to build my dream house because Thomas worked so hard. My parents are farmers in a rural area. That's why I always longed for a suburban house with a yard. Thanks to Thomas, Anthony and I live comfortably. I've come to terms with our limited family time. To outsiders, we might seem like a blessed family. However, due to my husband's frequent absence, I handle all the childcare and housework alone. It's basically single parenting. I wanted to work and send Anthony to daycare, but Thomas insisted on a preschool that also teaches. So Anthony goes to preschool and I ended up as a housewife. But I have a reassuring friend. My childhood friend Madison. We're the same age and from the same countryside. By coincidence, our kids attend the same preschool. Madison has been a single mother since her divorce last year. After dropping Anthony at preschool, having coffee at my place is my only break. We share our gripes about Thomas and the hardships of parenting. It's when I'm talking to Madison that I realize something. Unknowingly, I've been harboring dissatisfaction towards Thomas. People always say it's wrong to feel dissatisfied in my situation, and I thought so too. But maybe, I was just convincing myself not to be discontent. One day, while walking Max, he suddenly ran off. I chased after Max desperately. A car had stopped in front of me, and while Max managed to avoid it, I wasn't able to stop and ended up hitting the car. It was entirely my fault. Max looked at me worriedly from the sidewalk. I was relieved he was safe, but I couldn't stand up. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, diagnosed with a bruised shoulder and fractures in my ankle and fibula, and admitted immediately. It seems I'll be hospitalized for about 3 months. I wondered what would happen with Anthony's care. And the house. The worries seemed endless. I called Thomas's mobile phone. I thought he would cooperate at a time like this, but he was continuously unavailable. As I grew anxious, Madison called me. It was to discuss costumes for the preschool play, but I cut the conversation short and asked her to take care of Anthony. Madison was initially surprised and concerned for me, but hearing that I sounded stronger than expected, she gladly agreed to look after Anthony. I was so grateful I almost cried. Next, I phoned Mom to briefly inform her of the accident and my weeks-long hospital stay. She said she'd come as soon as she finished her tasks. Until Mom arrives, Madison would be the only one to rely on. After hanging up with Mom, Thomas finally called. Sorry, I was too busy to answer the phone. I reported the accident to Thomas and asked him to bring some clothes and essentials. But his response was unbelievable. No way. Why should I do that? I have to get up early tomorrow, ask someone else. I had expected Thomas to be incredibly worried, but I was the one shocked. Not just because he refused to bring my things, but because he showed no concern at all. I had hoped for Thomas to worry about me and our family. Was I too naive to expect kind words from Thomas? The next day, Madison came to the hospital. She brought my change of clothes and other necessities from home. Madison has a key to my house. And I have one to hers. We always agreed to help each other out in emergencies. I brought extra towels. Let me know if you need anything else. Madison's thoughtfulness made me feel so grateful. After Thomas's behavior yesterday, her kindness was a relief. I couldn't help but tear up. Madison said with a laugh,
"You're overreacting."
lending me a handkerchief. Madison is the complete opposite of me, calm, good at reading the atmosphere, and empathetic. I've never seen her in a fight. She's nothing like me, who wants to get a qualification and work outside. Are you okay from the injury? Take better care of yourself. Madison's ever-gentle tone comforted me. Don't worry about Anthony. He stayed at my place last night and slept with my kids. Without me saying anything, Madison understands.
Why is Thomas so indifferent to us? I get he's busy, but he doesn't even visit you in the hospital and hasn't seen Anthony, right?
While Madison visited, I vented my frustrations about Thomas. Seeing me sighing and lamenting, Madison smiled kindly. Men are like that sometimes. He's probably under stress we don't know about at work.
Maybe, but not showing his face or concern, that's going too far.
Thomas works late, he's not just out having fun, right? That's true. We have a comfortable life and our own home because of Thomas. He does earn enough for us. I felt somewhat convinced by Madison's words. Let me know if you need anything. I can make time to come see you. Talking to Madison lightened my mood a bit. I'll have a proper talk with Thomas once I'm discharged from the hospital. Right now, I just wanted to see Anthony. Mom came from the countryside to help, and after 3 weeks, I was finally home. Mom dropped me off and left immediately due to responsibilities back home. My house felt so nostalgic after 3 weeks. Max greeted me. He barked at my crutches as if they were the enemy. I sat on the sofa and looked around. Nothing had changed. Home really is comforting. Max kept barking at me, even as I relaxed on the sofa. There are no crutches now. What's wrong? Max dove into my bag and pulled out a handkerchief. The one I meant to return to Madison. I had put it in my bag to wash it at home. Max grabbed the hem of my pants and started pulling. He seemed to want to take me somewhere. I managed to get up and followed Max with my crutches. He walked excitedly. Max stopped in front of our bedroom, stood up, and opened the door with his claws. Why the bedroom? Max, what's going on? Without hesitation, Max dived under the bed and pulled something out with his mouth. It looked like a beautifully patterned cloth. Max dropped it in front of me. It looked familiar. I spread it out and realized it was a scarf. I remembered seeing it weeks ago. Yes, Madison wore it when she visited me in the hospital. But why is Madison's scarf here? I shuddered at an unpleasant thought. No, that can't be right. Madison is my childhood friend, my best friend, and she's kind. I shook my head to dismiss these scary thoughts. Then, Max climbed onto the bed and started pulling at the sheets. I felt as if the blood had drained from my body. If Max was right, it would mean Madison had slept in our bed. Madison's gentle smile flashed in my mind. It must be an overthinking. I talked to Max that no such thing have happened. Madison couldn't have slept here, right? Max gently licked my face. In the afternoon, Anthony came home. Seeing me, he hugged me tightly. Indeed, Anthony is my sunshine. I felt brighter and warmer. I tentatively asked him, "Where did you sleep while I was in the hospital?" "In my room, with Madison and her kids at our place. It was fun." "What does that mean?" "I thought Anthony stayed at Madison's house." Didn't Madison say so? My suspicions only grew. Where did Madison sleep then? I bravely asked Anthony where Madison slept. I don't know. But she and Dad were talking in the living room late, probably drinking too. I don't know. But she and Dad were talking in the living room late, probably drinking too. I left Anthony and went back to the bedroom. Standing there alone. The thought was overwhelming. Thomas and Madison in this bed while my family and I were ignored. I couldn't believe it. Or rather, I didn't want to believe it. The bed was neatly made, no sign of any disturbance in the sheets or duvet. But could the smell not have been completely removed? And then there was the forgotten item. That Max had noticed it. Since discovering this suspicion, I couldn't sleep in that bed. I started sleeping with Anthony. He was happy, not suspecting anything. Thomas had become a repulsive presence. With so many thoughts swirling in my head, there were many days I couldn't sleep. Where did we go wrong as a couple? When my leg cast was removed, Thomas left the house in a strangely good mood. I had a bad feeling. While waiting for the preschool bus, Madison arrived. She was unusually stylish. Her makeup a bit more flamboyant. Good morning. You look so stylish today. Got a date? I asked casually, trying not to show my suspicions. Madison smiled unabashedly. I've met someone I really like, she said. It was clear now. No proof, but Madison was doing something despicable. She liked the one person she shouldn't. I struggled to hide my trembling, angry hands. After parting with a happy Madison, I returned home, stunned. I couldn't let Thomas and Madison continue like this. It had to end. When I was able to move freely, I decided to visit my parents. That night, I told Thomas about going to my parents' house next week with Anthony and invited him. I won't go. Got work. You two go ahead. I knew Thomas wouldn't come. But his smile bothered me. He asked when I was leaving and returning. No interest in me, but he cared about when I'd be absent. I said I'd leave on Wednesday and return Sunday night. Got it. So you're returning Sunday night. Thomas pulled out his mobile phone and started entering something in his schedule. I could tell why he was so keen on confirming our return date. I didn't miss the smirk on Thomas's face as he fiddled with his phone. The 5 days at my parents' house were wonderful. Anthony was extremely interested in farming, spending every day in the fields with Dad, enjoying playing in the dirt. On our way home, I had fun. I want to come back, Anthony kept saying. Thinking about the confrontation awaiting at home, I felt heavy-hearted. After I returned from my parents', Thomas suddenly announced he was going on a week-long business trip. Previously, his trips were at most 2 nights long. A week seemed suspiciously long. Seeing my puzzled face. Got a lot of clients to visit. Might even land a big contract. Thomas started talking about work, something he usually doesn't do. It sounded like he was trying to cover up guilt. Yet, he was in a great mood while packing, humming tunes. It looked more like preparing for a vacation than a business trip. Thomas left early in the morning. Even unusually saying, "I'm off." And he left. I heard the engine sound outside. He wouldn't use the car for a business trip. Feeling something was off, I stepped outside and saw our car parked in the garage. Back inside, I casually looked at the shoe rack and noticed Thomas's hiking shoes were missing. You don't pair hiking shoes with a suit. Checking the closet, his outdoor jacket was gone too. What kind of business trip was this? But still, Thomas being away for a week was a fact. I was relieved not seeing him. By then, I had no romantic feelings left for Thomas. A few days later, while cleaning the house after dropping Anthony at preschool, I received a call from an unknown number on my mobile phone. I answered with caution. It was from a hospital near my parents' house, located in the mountains. Shocked by the call, I rushed to the hospital. After picking up Anthony from preschool, we hurried to my parents. I explained briefly to Anthony in the car. Thomas had gotten lost while camping, slipped, and fell down a ravine. He was alive but suffered from multiple bruises and a severe open fracture in his leg. Luckily, he was rescued by local firefighters. It could have been life-threatening if not for the rescue. Initially, Anthony joked, "That's just like Mom." But when I told him about the severity, he became serious and worried. I left Anthony with my parents and headed to the hospital. Indeed, Thomas's business trip was a lie. I knew it, but still, I couldn't contain my anger. I felt too kind for bringing his clothes and other belongings. I also brought an important envelope with me. At the hospital, I learned Thomas was in intensive care. While waiting in the lobby, I heard painful screams. It seemed to be Thomas's voice. I was worried, but also thought it was divine punishment. After a while, a nurse guided me to the ICU. There, Thomas was crying and screaming in pain and fear. His neck was immobilized, and his body was wrapped in bandages. Anthony, seeing him, would probably exclaim, "He looks like a mummy," making a big fuss. He was in such a pitiful state. As soon as Thomas saw me, he pleaded, "Please, take care of me."
"Why should I?"
I blurted out reflexively. Who does he think he is to ask this? When I broke my bone and was hospitalized. It's a no from me. Ask someone else. And who was it who said that? Then, the curtain of the next bed opened. And I screamed. There was Madison. Indeed, they had gone camping together. Madison was injured too. Not just her arms and legs, but her face and head were wrapped in bandages. Her eyes were terribly bruised. She couldn't move freely. Thomas, with his face immobilized and in pain, hadn't noticed the curtain open. He vented his frustration and pain at me.
"Do you even understand my pain? Don't just stand there, start taking care of me."
Thomas had fallen from a high place to the bottom of a valley. Of course, it would hurt. He was lucky to be alive.
"Like I could understand your pain."
I snapped back at Thomas. My patience had reached its limit. Thomas lied about a business trip to go camping with Madison, got into an accident, caused trouble for everyone. And now he's making a scene about being cared for.
It's your own responsibility. Be grateful you even got help.
I was done extending my hand to Thomas. Our marital relationship was already over. Today, here it all ends. Madison is here too, so it's perfect. Time to settle things. I decided to corner Thomas. I didn't care about his pain anymore. Justice was on my side.
Do they call camping a business trip at your company? Or were there clients at the campsite?
I didn't relent. I kept pressing Thomas.
Do you need to go to remote mountains for IT work and risk getting lost?
Thomas glared at me through tears, enduring the pain.
Shut up. It's none of your business. You went back to your parents' house, didn't you? Don't lecture me.
What an audacious claim. I had honestly said I was going to my parents. But Thomas had lied.
I didn't lie. Did you have a reason to lie?
Thomas just glared, unable to retort. I turned my back on the silent Thomas and looked down at Madison.
Did you follow Thomas and fall too?
Madison, grimacing in pain, spoke.
Yes, I was trying to help Thomas and we both slipped and fell. So, your fun camping trip turned into a disaster.
I snorted.
It's not what you think, Elizabeth. It's a misunderstanding.
Madison retorted in a small, pained voice. What misunderstanding? It all seemed to be the truth.
I insisted on going camping with Thomas. I know this area well. There are hidden spots there.
Madison was defending Thomas. Maybe she felt like a victim.
Please, don't blame him. Thomas did nothing wrong.
Madison was sobbing. The more she spoke, the less truthful it sounded, yet she continued.
I didn't mean to hurt you, and I never expected it to turn into this. I'm really sorry.
Madison seemed intoxicated by her own tears. Her words felt insincere. I should be the one crying. Thomas, noticing Madison's voice, interrupted our conversation. I just accompanied Madison for her hobby. I couldn't refuse your best friend's invitation. Thomas seemed determined not to admit any infidelity.
So, the business trip was a lie, then?
Thomas began to get flustered. Victim playing Madison continued to defend Thomas.
Both of you, stop it. This disgraceful affair will only bring more trouble if it continues.
It seemed I would be the one to bring retribution upon Thomas and Madison. I was done with Madison's melodramatic charade. I took out an envelope from my bag, which I had brought from home. I spread out the photos from the envelope over Thomas and Madison's bed. Thomas and Madison were speechless. Their eyes wide. The photos showed Thomas and Madison entering a hotel arm in arm, and entering my house, hands intertwined. I had hired a detective when Max found Madison's scarf in our bed. They had been meeting not only during my visit to my parents, but also at other times. Thomas turned red with anger.
How dare you do this? Spying and sneaking around. We just had dinner together while you were hospitalized.
I almost laughed at Thomas's transparent overreaction. Meanwhile, Madison was still in tears. She covered her face with her hands, but I could see her peeking through the gaps. Maybe Madison was even worse. Thomas's tirade continued.
This is fake. You must have fabricated it.
He weakly swatted the photos away.
You won't admit it, huh? I didn't want to use this, but...
I sighed and pulled out an IC recorder from my bag.
I placed this under the bed in our bedroom.
Thomas and Madison swallowed hard. Sweat trickled down from the gaps in Thomas's bandages. I took my time looking at both of them, then pressed the play button.
Don't tease me. I can't wait any longer.
I pressed stop and turned to Madison.
Do you want to hear the rest?
Madison, losing her expression, shook her head side to side. It seemed she was beyond pretending to cry.
There's plenty more. You spoke quite ill of me.
Stop it. I'm sorry, just stop. My husband muttered softly. I asked Madison how long they had been involved. I was jealous of you. I failed at marriage, yet you lived in such a nice house, living luxuriously. And you were always complaining about Thomas. So, I thought I'd take him for myself. It all started from Madison's jealousy. She envied others.
If I had Thomas, I could have a life like that too. What's wrong with that?
Madison was defiant. Playing the victim. While listening to us, Thomas tried to snatch the IC recorder from me.
Careful!
Moving suddenly caused him intense pain. He lost his balance and fell from the bed. Thomas didn't make a sound. It seemed like he had fainted. Madison, shocked, looked at Thomas. I pressed the nurse call button. Nurses arrived quickly, and I was ushered out of the ICU. Once in the hallway, I realized my legs were shaking. I had been strong in confrontation, but I was really scared. During Thomas's hospitalization, I started divorce proceedings. With plenty of evidence of his infidelity, the lawyer said the divorce could be favorable for me. I would demand alimony and child support from Thomas. But that alone wasn't enough to punish Thomas. A thorough division of property was necessary. I sold the house, liquidating it into cash, divided the savings, and split stocks and investments. Thomas's parents came to apologize sincerely. They would oversee the alimony and child support payments. I promised Anthony could visit his grandparents occasionally. I filed a claim for alimony against Madison too. She would repay it little by little. Madison suffered an after effect to one leg from the accident. She couldn't walk without a cane. Thomas's condition was worse. He was close to needing a lower limb amputation. He became wheelchair-bound. The affair, disguised as a business trip, led to severe reprimands at work. He was demoted as a disciplinary action. Though he could have been dismissed, his past performance was considered. No one in the office sympathized with Thomas. He faced cold stares. Having lost the house, Thomas drained his savings on alimony and child support, now living in an old apartment. Without barrier-free access, he struggled with daily life. Recently, Thomas's dad reported to me. Thomas and Madison had broken up. For Madison, a wheelchair-bound Thomas was no longer desirable. Thomas and Madison never imagined things would turn out like this. They must be haunted by regret now, wishing they had refrained from lying and stepping over the line. But it's too late for regrets. Nothing can undo the past. Anthony and I decided to move back to my parents' house and live with them. With my parents around and Anthony starting at daycare, I found time for myself and got a job at a local real estate company. I'm vigorously studying to obtain several real estate qualifications. Anthony, loving the increased opportunities to be in nature, seems to be thoroughly enjoying life here. Every morning, before the sun rises, he goes to the fields with Dad to care for the crops. Anthony loves watching Dad operate the tiller. He must think of him as a hero. After helping in the fields, Anthony heads to daycare, plays to his heart's content, and returns home. Living in the countryside has made him sturdier and more sun-kissed compared to our urban life. It seems being surrounded by nature is better for Anthony. My parents are happy and smiling all day, enjoying the lively atmosphere. Max, the hero of this whole situation, seems to love it here too. He used to be reluctant to go for walks, but now he eagerly awaits them every morning. He loves being in the fields with Anthony and Dad, playing and getting muddy. Recently, during a family picnic by the river, Anthony suddenly stood up.
"When I grow up, I want to be like Grandpa."
Dad, with a big smile, patted Anthony's head. Mom watched Anthony with joy in her eyes. "What are you?
A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already."
I came to the wedding to celebrate the happily smiling bride and groom. Then, to my surprise, the groom turned out to be my ex-husband, Alec. I'm definitely not his stalker.
Do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing.
All my past anger and the shock of suddenly encountering Alec just vanished. As Alec wished, I decided to leave. However, 30 minutes later, I ended up returning to the venue with someone. I wonder if Alec would be pleased with the surprise guest. It's going to be more interesting than any entertainment. I'm Melissa, 36 years old. I met my husband Stuart 10 years ago. At the nursing home where my grandmother was staying, I blurted out big when I first met Stuart, a caregiver there. He's close to 6.5 feet tall, big both vertically and horizontally. As I covered my mouth with my hand, feeling I had said too much, he smiled shyly.
"Big, right? Everyone calls me a bear."
Gradually, I got closer to Stuart. Despite his appearance resembling a wild man-eating bear, his personality was like a cute bear sunbathing at a bear park. Kind, gentle, and comforting to be around. I never dreamed of marriage and had decided to stay single, but my stubborn heart was softened, and I ended up marrying. Now, blessed with our 4-year-old son Leon, I deeply feel it was the right thing to do. The reason I avoided marriage was because I had failed at it once. I got married for the first time at 22. To a man who was the opposite of Stuart, modern, slender, fresh-faced, and handsome. His well-featured face could make anyone believe he was a celebrity. In fact, my ex-husband Alec would often lie to people he just met. I used to model in Boston. Our married life was in my hometown, where it was quite rural. Not a farmland rural, but a place where everyone needs a car. Yet supermarkets and hospitals are only a 10-minute drive away, and if you drive 30 minutes more, you'll find a large shopping mall as well. I think it's a nice countryside. And as for Alec, he came from the city. He attended a nearby university and stayed in the area after graduation. At first, our marriage life was enjoyable. Alec got along with my friends, often suggesting we call someone to hang out. Being young, we would gather with friends, drink, and have fun. Alec was quick to fit in with a female-dominated environment. I thought he wanted to cherish everything about me, including my friendships. He loved me that much. I truly believed so. This is hard to say, but it was a few months into our marriage. A friend approached me seriously. Alec has asked me out multiple times to hang out just the two of us without telling you. It wasn't an invitation to play tag or pretend. My head was immediately filled with indecent thoughts. And it wasn't just her. Alec had approached almost all of my friends. I felt betrayed by Alec and sorry for my friends. I confronted Alec immediately. I'm just saying that to be sociable. It makes women happy. Alec carelessly patted my head as I turned red with anger. Well, some simple women might misunderstand kindness from a handsome guy like me. Luckily, none of my friends betrayed me to go along with Alec's invitations. Everything was attempted but not fulfilled, and my friends forgave him with awkward smiles. After that, Alec's interactions with my friends ceased. Alec was also close with my parents. Once a month, he would visit my parents' home and drink with my father. With no more plans with my friends, visits to my parents increased.
Got some booze for today.
Alec and my father, both fond of alcohol, got along well, and home visits would turn into daytime drinking sessions. Alec would bring selected drinks as gifts, pleasing my father. My mother, Reagan, would prepare appetizers, and we spent lively times as a family. Alec, comfortable and natural with my in-laws, was well liked by them. But gradually, my parents started to act differently. One time, as I was about to go to the bathroom, my mom stopped me and whispered secretly, "We'd appreciate it if you could reduce the frequency of your visits. You know, we're getting older, and it's becoming difficult for us." She was vague, but it seemed she had more to say. "The alcohol Alec brought today is hard to come by, you know. I heard it costs $500.
What? It's not that expensive?
My mother clammed up. Then, she revealed something I hadn't expected. He's been asking us to pay for it.
What?
It's nice having Alec over and the alcohol is good. But, honestly, it's a burden to pay for expensive alcohol every time. Initially, the cost for the alcohol was around $20.
Could I get the money for the alcohol?
He would say so nonchalantly, and my mother happily paid. But gradually, the price increased, and it became normal for it to exceed $300. However, the actual cost of the alcohol was at most $50, and above all, it was purchased with our living expenses. $500 is just too much. But we can't spoil Alec's feelings, right? Indeed, my parents had repeatedly said that gifts were unnecessary, without me realizing the underlying sentiment. I thought I was doing filial piety by visiting frequently with Alec. I immediately confronted Alec, who looked happily flushed, about asking for money. Maybe because he was drunk, he responded nonchalantly. "What's the big deal? If you go to a club, you pay a lot of money, right? I'm bringing alcohol and drinking it with them, so I should get paid, or it's a loss." He didn't care about my anger at all, almost as if he expected gratitude. Turning towards my beet-red face, he laughed. "Hey, Melissa turned into an octopus. Reagan, make some octopus appetizers." I was so dumbfounded by the absurdity of it all that I lost my words. I just exchanged looks with my parents, who had twisted expressions. Alec seemed to like my family home. Unlimited drinks, a mother who worked like a maid, and he even receives pocket money. But I couldn't bring Alec home anymore.
Ah, so boring. I'm nice to you and this is how you treat me.
After that, Alec stopped coming to the house and started going out alone. On top of not giving me any money for living expenses, he had secretly incurred debts. And when infidelity came to light and I confronted him, he suddenly hit me.
"Shut up. I don't need you anymore. It's over, we're getting divorced."
And that's how we ended up divorcing. A bitter memory I don't want to even remember. I had forgotten about him, blessed with a new family, but 13 years after the divorce, for some reason, Alec was here. And next to a bride in a pure white dress. Alec was the groom. It was a wedding I was invited to by my junior at work, Chanel. The guest list exceeded 300 people, a grand ceremony. Alec in his late 30s had changed his vibe, but there was no way I would mistake him for someone else. The radiant beauty of his youth was gone, replaced by the air of a sweet, calm gentleman. He was spreading his best smile all over the reception. I had dressed up nicely but tried to make myself less noticeable by slouching a bit. My mind was full of why and how. Maybe my suspicious behavior made me stand out more, as I locked eyes with him. I smiled awkwardly and nodded slightly while sweating. Oh my God, how awkward. I felt so uncomfortable that I went to the bathroom. The reception had just started. I spent some time there, but I couldn't stay hidden for another 2 hours. Reluctantly, as I was about to return, Alec, with his arms crossed, was blocking the way in front of the venue. What are you doing here? I wanted to ask the same. When we divorced, Alec had scornfully said he hated country folk and moved to the city. I didn't know he had come back to my hometown. Alec leaned in with the same unpleasant smile as before. What's the matter? You still hung up on me after all these years? He seemed gentlemanly earlier, but it must have been just the outfit and the setting. Alec was still laughing vulgarly. Wow, you've got wrinkles. You've aged. You were cute when you were younger, but marrying for looks was a mistake. Good thing I divorced you back then. Alec pointed at the faint laugh lines I was self-conscious about and laughed all by himself. I've always felt he was a bit immature, but now it's just creepy, like he's still a little kid. Oh, wait a minute, what was your name again? Oh, Averill? Betty? Let's see, oh yeah, Melissa. Look, just give up on me already. As you can see, I'm married. I started to say, but Alec wasn't listening to me. Can't believe you were able to stalk me with that face of yours. Don't you own a mirror? Or are your eyes rotten? Oh, maybe it's presbyopia? Let's make things clear, with your looks, there's no way you and I could start over. I didn't want to see you. In my memories, you were still cute. Don't tarnish my memories. Alec stuck out his tongue in jest. Our past is already tainted. I only remember fighting with Alec, and if it's possible, I'd remove those memories from my brain. I wasn't prepared to encounter Alec like this today. I wanted to say something back, but my mind went blank and no words came out. I clenched my fist tightly and looked away from him. Your face is all red. Oh right, Melissa, you always used to get so mad and turn red. It was cute when you were younger, but a red-faced angry old woman is just ugly. My face felt even hotter. I looked away, but Alec kept peering into my face. You shouldn't choose a marriage partner based on looks. After all, looks fade. Sorry, Melissa, for leaving you when looks were all you had. This time, I'm going to be happy. I chose my partner not just for her looks, but for what's inside. What's inside? I couldn't help but ask back. Yeah, the inside. You must have been able to sneak in because there are so many people, but don't you see that you don't belong here at a wedding? Get lost already. He gestured as if he was shooing a dog away. But Again, Alec didn't listen to my words. Stop it. If you keep disrupting the wedding, I'll call the police. What you're doing is called stalking. But, do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing. Alec was loquacious, not giving me a chance to interject. He's always been talkative, but now he seemed overly excited. Breathing roughly, he finished speaking to me. What are you? A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already. I came here to celebrate the happily grinning bride and groom. I'm certainly not Alec's stalker. But I didn't feel like clearing up Alec's misunderstanding.
Fine, I'll leave.
Past anger and the confusion of suddenly encountering Alec just disappeared, and I answered emotionlessly. I had my bag with me, so I decided to leave without returning to the reception. I turned my back and Alec waved at me.
Bye-bye.
I turned around and asked one last question.
You chose her for what's inside?
Alec smirked nastily and nodded deeply.
Yeah.
She's really the best.
There's no way you could compete.
Is that so? Hearing just that, I walked away from Alec. The wedding venue was on a small hill. Surrounded by the clear sky and the sea, it was a beautiful location with no buildings around. However, it's hard to return to town without a car. I had planned to call Stuart for a pickup in a few hours, so I explained the situation to him. While waiting for Stuart, I sat on a bench outside the venue, quietly looking at the sky. Stuart was with Leon in a nearby park, so it would take some time for him to arrive. I had woken up early today, got ready, and even had my hair done at the salon. Alec laughed at me for looking older, but my son, Leon, told me I looked cute. I was so upset over the treatment Alec had given me, after putting so much effort into looking nice. 30 minutes had passed since I left the venue. I thought it was Stuart calling when my mobile phone rang, but the screen strangely showed Alec. My finger froze as I was about to press the call button. I hadn't been in contact with him at all since the divorce, so I hadn't even thought about his name still being in my phone book. I definitely didn't want to deal with Alec, so I decided to ignore the call. But the phone kept ringing. After about 3 rings, it stopped, only to start ringing again without a pause.
What's this? Does he still have something to complain about?
In no time, the missed calls had piled up to dozens. At this point, it's hard to tell who the stalker is. Checking my call history, I realized a colleague from work had also called. Interrupted by Alec's incessant ringing, it was resulting in a missed call notification. While fiddling with my phone, scared of accidentally making a call, I noticed a message from my colleague amidst the missed calls and managed to check it.
The candle service.
It seems the bride, Chanel, is upset because of my absence. The candle service was one of Chanel's special requests. She had tried to gather all the guests who had stepped out for a toilet break or a smoke, causing a small commotion when I didn't return. I had messaged my colleague that I had to leave due to an emergency, but I could imagine Chanel wouldn't be satisfied with that explanation. The voicemail Alec left was, "I thought you were stalking me. If you were really a guest, you could have just said so.
I'm not mad, so just come back already. It'd be a waste not to eat the cake."
The condescending tone of his hurried message made me even less inclined to return.
What a hassle. With hundreds of people there, it wouldn't matter if I was missing.
I vented my true feelings, thinking no one was around. Then, a car pulled into the parking lot. To my surprise, a woman in a pure white dress got out of the driver's seat. She looked exactly like a bride. Normally, brides get ready at the venue, so this was clearly unusual. I couldn't help but stare at her. Noticing my gaze, the woman gave me a kind smile.
"Thank you for attending our wedding today." "What?"
Misunderstanding, I forced a smile and explained. "Oh, I'm a colleague of the bride currently at the reception. Are you about to have your ceremony? Lovely dress."
"Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this day."
"Congratulations."
Despite the pleasant atmosphere, I felt a sense of unease. I remembered Chanel bragging various things about the wedding. How she requested the highest quality catering, a dress by a famous designer. Her bragging wouldn't end and our break times were completely consumed by those topics. And one of them was the exclusive booking of the wedding venue. Normally, up to 6 couples could hold their ceremonies in a day. However, Chanel insisted on having her special day all to herself. I wondered if the woman had gotten the date wrong. The happily-looking woman confided a secret, saying, "Actually." Hearing this, I headed back to the venue I had just been kicked out of. It seemed like it would be more entertaining than any special performance. At the entrance of the banquet hall, Alec and Chanel were having an argument. Noticing me, Alec hurried over.
I've been waiting for you forever.
Chanel, having been informed by Alec, glared at me.
So you know Alec? I heard you used to like him and followed him around. Saying you can't celebrate the marriage of someone you used to like and leaving? That's something middle or high schoolers would do. How inconsiderate.
Chanel, it was Alec who told me to leave.
Don't be annoying. Can you not call my husband by his first name?
Alec avoided my gaze as soon as I looked at him. As if a casual lie could cover the truth.
Right, I should have been more considerate. After all, Alec and I divorced over 10 years ago. Excuse me? What did you say?
Chanel tilted her head in confusion. Obviously, Alec hadn't shared any inconvenient truths with her. Alec tried to silence me, but I spoke up anyway.
What do you mean? Alec and I were married.
Chanel's eyes widened in shock. Alec, sensing danger, shrank back like a scared kitten.
What? You used to be married? I didn't know about this. Unbelievable.
Before the wedding, Chanel often spoke about her ideal partner.
Someone with fair skin, a model-like face, who would grant all my wishes like a prince. And of course, he has to be utterly devoted to me.
A wish list that seemed pulled straight from a fairy tale. I had heard she had dated twice in the past, but she broke up with them because they merely glanced at another girl, screaming betrayal at the slightest provocation. She would never accept a history of divorce. Then Chanel, giddy with the notion of having found her Prince Charming, had married Alec after a brief courtship. It was Chanel's mistake for not looking into him more, despite her usual insistence on details. Alec hurried to cover up.
Chanel, it's not what you think. I did marry her, but it was a youthful mistake. A folly of youth, you know? And to prove it, we split up after about a year.
He tried to put his arm around Chanel's shoulder, only to be shrugged off.
I had pretty much forgotten she existed, and now I'm all about you, Chanel. It's actually her who's been bothering me. She kept staring at me during the ceremony, and it was really creepy. Come on, Chanel, Melissa is the annoying one. You know I wouldn't be interested in someone like her. Trust me.
Chanel's lips were clenched so tightly that they bled. She seemed to be holding back her anger.
I get it, Melissa is the annoying one. I mean, you knew it was Alec as soon as you saw the invitation, right? Did you dress up all fancy because you thought you'd see Alec? Talk about creepy. Thinking there might be a chance?
I had become the common enemy of Alec and Chanel. By berating me, Chanel seemed to have felt better and snuggled up to Alec artificially.
She's my stalker. Probably got mad knowing I was getting married. Lately, she's been following me around. It's been truly creepy. It was too much not matter how much she likes me. Stalking and then showing up at the wedding thinking there's a chance is just too creepy.
They laughed together. A vulgar laughter that didn't suit the beautiful bride and groom.
Melissa, I'm sorry. I know it must be hard to see me and Alec so happy, but it's unthinkable for someone to leave in the middle of the ceremony. Please, stay till the end to get over your feelings for Alec.
I was ridiculed thoroughly. I couldn't possibly celebrate their union now.
Chanel, I really didn't know the groom was Alec. Save your pointless act. It's true. Because he had a different last name back then.
Chanel, not understanding, was carefully enlightened by me.
He was Alec Brown before. Now, Alec Taylor. Do you understand why?
Alec was the first to pounce on me. Not that we were getting along, but Chanel, with a look of anger, pulled us apart. This made it easier to continue.
Alec has been married and divorced several times after divorcing me, even taking his wives' last names.
Alec yelled, "Shut up," but was immobilized by Chanel, who had thrown her arms around him. Chanel's grip tightened, and Alec began to moan in pain. Alec's history of divorces wasn't just once. It appears he had been married and divorced at least 5 times. Knowing the truth, Chanel's grip tightened around Alec to the point it seemed she might be breaking his spine. Alec couldn't even make a sound. To those unaware of the turmoil, they might appear as a passionately embracing bride and groom. The banquet staff, previously too intimidated to intervene, finally managed to stop Chanel. Chanel's fiery temper had evidently left the staff terrified. But they seemed to realize Alec's life was in danger if they didn't act. After a bit of coughing, Alec turned his fury on me.
Melissa. Secretly following me around and digging up unnecessary information. You're beyond what you call a stalker.
Although Alec's bloodshot eyes were frightening, I kept my composure.
Come on, it's your wedding. Let's keep it calm.
I looked towards the lobby and saw that she was prepared.
Alec, congratulations on your wedding.
I clapped loudly. Perplexed Alec and Chanel watched with a perplexed expression. Then a woman in her wedding dress approached. The shyly smiling woman was far more charming as a bride than Chanel. While I was blessing them with a full smile, Alec stepped back with a pale face.
Isabel.
The woman who had arrived at the venue in a wedding dress was named Isabel. According to her, she had been dating Alec until a few months ago. They even got engaged. But he broke up with her suddenly without giving a reason, and Isabel couldn't accept it. Upon investigating, she discovered he had another fiancé and was repeatedly getting married. Her unceasing smile in this situation was eerie. Though skeptical of her story at first, the evidence of their relationship and the detailed records of Alec's past she provided made disbelief impossible.
I've always been by Alec's side. I know everything about him. So the stalker was you?
Alec had actually been a victim of stalking. That's why he mistook me for the stalker. While Chanel and the staff were stunned, Isabel pulled Alec's arm. In place of the frozen staff, I pushed open the heavy doors to the banquet hall. Inside, the guests were tired of the lengthy and dull entertainment. The newly returned bride and groom were greeted with huge applause.
Thank you, everyone, thank you.
Isabel led Alec through the venue. Isabel radiated a happiness aura from her entire being. Alec, now utterly soulless, barely managed to stand. A light push on his index finger might topple him. Gradually, the applause thinned, and the room grew so quiet you wouldn't think it held hundreds of guests.
Who are you?
Finally, Chanel shouted. Lifting her dress, she stormed towards Isabel. A beautiful bride and an ugly bride faced off.
I was the one promised to marry Alec.
Chanel pulled on Alec's right arm, while Isabel clung to his left.
Lies. It's not a lie.
I presented the evidence Isabel had prepared to Chanel. Even after seeing it, Chanel screamed, "It's a lie," and threw the evidence away. A guest picked it up, and a game of telephone started spontaneously. While Isabel and Chanel fought, the whole venue quickly became aware of the situation. Even as the staff and both families tried to intervene, Chanel was too agitated to be stopped. Isabel laughed madly. Of course, the wedding couldn't continue, and the guests were practically kicked out. Alec, notably, had fainted on the floor. An incensed Chanel, not noticing Alec had collapsed, impressively trampled over his face. Isabel vanished after seemingly fulfilling her revenge. Though Chanel had been cheated on by Alec, she received no sympathy from anyone. Her disgrace at the wedding was too much to elicit even pity. Chanel came from a wealthy family, the only daughter. She dropped out of college and couldn't keep a job, so she was introduced to work at my company. Her only computer skill was internet browsing. Ignoring her simple tasks, she would bother us, busy with our work, endlessly bragging and complaining. A perfect example of self-centeredness. The forced attendance at her wedding, and our lack of fondness for her from the start, made sympathy impossible. Even Chanel's parents weren't on her side. Apparently, many guests were business contacts of her parents, who were furious at being embarrassed by her. Honestly, at least her parents could have defended her. But like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Ironically, Alec should be thankful for the outcome, given he was supposed to be beaten up by Chanel. Yet for some reason, Alec showed up at my house, accusing me of stalking, when now it seemed he was the stalker.
It's your fault. You past women ruined the wedding.
Despite everything that happened, Alec is living with Chanel as planned, and yet he's complaining.
You're happy you're married to Chanel, aren't you? No way. She's worthless. What? But you chose Chanel for her personality, didn't you?
Well, yeah.
I overlooked her looks and chose her for her wealth.
That's a quality, right?
Her family is well known around here for being rich. But if her family's money isn't coming in because she's estranged from them, there's no point in being with her.
That's what I thought. I wondered if two self-centered people might get along, but normally, they'd clash. Alec was just pretending to be a prince, hiding his true self. He often complained about how boring the countryside was during our marriage, but he mentioned one good thing about it. The culture of respecting men still existed. Indeed, Alec was treated as an honored guest at my family's home, so he got carried away. Moreover, he said rural women are simple. He hasn't grown in over a decade. No matter how much anger I show, he comes begging to me with a completely changed attitude.
Melissa, do something. She's put GPS on my phone because she suspects me of cheating, and I'm locked up at home when I'm not at work. Actually, she quit her job and has time, so she follows me around and watches me sometimes. It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Right? She's the one who's crazy.
But it can't be helped. Alec, you would cheat right away if she didn't do that, wouldn't you? It's natural for him to be suspected, as he has no credibility. Alec plays the victim, but he is undoubtedly the perpetrator.
I can't even take a breather, let alone cheat. I hate this. I want to escape. Melissa, help me.
Alec is nothing but a blemish on my life. Even his attempts to evoke pity is just repulsive. Just as I was getting fed up, a screech like a beast's cry echoed from afar. However, the source of the cry, charging like a gorilla, was Chanel.
What are you doing here? How? You were out and I even left my phone at home.
Chanel pushed the pale-faced Alec aside and whispered a warning to me.
The GPS is also in his wallet and on his keychain, so I'm always watching him. Don't even think about stealing my husband.
I could imagine Alec wanting to cry over such suffocating living conditions. Still, I have no sympathy for a habitual cheater.
I wouldn't steal him. Be happy with Alec.
I answered with a smile. Chanel tried to take Alec back, hugging him, but he stubbornly resisted. I don't want to go back. Come on, Melissa. Deep down, you still love me, don't you? His confidence was baffling.
Love you? Impossible. I'm married too, you know.
The front door quietly opened. I had asked Stuart, my current husband, to wait inside, feeling awkward about introducing my ex to him. But he couldn't stay away any longer due to the noise outside.
Eek!
Alec shrieked at the sight of the towering Stuart looking down on him. Trembling as if he'd encountered a man-eating bear, I teased him for fun.
This man is being persistent. Can you do something?
Stuart's eyebrows twitched at my words. Just that was enough for Alec to cling to Chanel and make a quick escape. Alec, frightened by the gentle bear, never showed up in front of me again. Whether it's because of the bear or he's sticking to Chanel in their newlywed life, I don't know. Thus, my peaceful days returned. I'm not good with confrontations, Melissa. I didn't know what to do to help when you were in trouble. Sorry.
It's okay. You're protecting me, just being by my side, Stuart. Even with this look, there comes advantages. I always felt my size and intimidating presence were a flaw, but it turns out, just a glare can protect my family when needed. Not bad at all.
Stuart and I shared a smile. Then Leon, wielding a toy sword, bursted in. I'll defeat the dinosaur. Suddenly, it was time for a play fight. Stuart is always casted as a dinosaur. Ah, I'm defeated.
Got you! Mama, I came to save you. I defeated the scary dinosaur.
Stuart effortlessly lifted Leon onto his shoulders.
Brave sir, I won't cause trouble anymore. Please make me your ally. Okay. Let's protect Mama together. Yay!
I have two reliable heroes by my side. The sight of Big Stuart and little Leon playing together is something I cherish. I want to protect this simple daily happiness.
Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork. Are you telling me to eat lunch with my hands? What a ridiculous, cruel wife.
After our child was born, my husband started calling me a cruel wife occasionally.
Why did I marry this man?
I could hardly remember. Before we got married, I thought I liked him because he was kind and considerate. It was often said that women would change after getting married and having children. But I would ask this. What about men who don't change at all even after having kids? Isn't that somehow strange? Fed up with my mounting irritation, I shouted back at my husband on the phone.
Shut up! If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands. Why can't you?
My name is Carol, a 36-year-old office worker. By the way, I am currently on parental leave. Though in a different department, my husband Kent was a colleague at the same company. Kent, a responsible and respected manager, was our team leader. After dating for 3 years, we got married. We were both busy with work, but we spent our days off together and had a reasonably happy life. However, I began to have certain troubles as I got older.
When will you guys let me see my grandchild?
These were the words of Louis, who is Kent's dad, as my father-in-law. Every time he looked at me and said this, I get sick to my stomach. I don't like Louis, or rather I hate him. He's arrogant and acts so pompous. Louis was a department head in a fairly large company. He may be a man in positions of authority, but I always think that it just at work and doesn't apply at home.
I often saw him scolding mother-in-law Deanna. When I told Kent, he said, "My parents have always been like that. They haven't divorced, so it must be working out, right?"
He talked about it as if it was none of his business, which made me wonder if this was really okay. We got married when I was 28, but we didn't have children for a while. About 2 years into our marriage, we started to think it might be difficult to conceive naturally, so we went to the hospital together. The test results revealed there was something wrong with Kent.
What? You mean I'm the cause? Really?
Kent couldn't believe what the doctor said. Even after getting a second opinion at 2 other hospitals, the results were the same.
All I could do was to try to cheer up the disheartened Kent, saying, "The doctor said there's still a chance. I'll do my best too."
Looking back, maybe Kent didn't even like these words from me. After that, we started treatment, which was quite tough. Not only was it physically tough, but it was also mentally taxing. Every time I passed a pregnant woman with a big belly at the OBGYN, I kept thinking, why can't I have a baby?
Every time I saw Louis during this time, he asked repeatedly, "Hasn't my grandchild been born yet?"
Deanna was always kind to me, encouraging me not to worry.
"Dad is such a problem. I've explained to him that I'm the cause, but..."
Ken said in disgust. The treatment was hard, but back then, I hadn't even considered divorcing Kent. Then, when I was 35, I finally conceived our long-awaited baby.
Even Louis was pleased, saying, "Really? I was starting to give up hope, but now I'll finally be a granddad."
His words were excessive, but he seemed happy. Deanna also told me to take care of myself.
What surprised us even more was that I was expecting twins. There was some anxiety about suddenly becoming a mother of 2, but Kent said, "Let me know anything I can do, I'll do anything."
As might be expected of twins, by the time I passed the 6-month mark, my belly was as big as if I was at full term. By then, we knew both were boys.
But there was anxiety as well as joy. This one is growing well, but the other hasn't grown much since last time. The doctor sometimes told me at checkups.
I prepared myself for a smaller birth and prayed for their safe growth every day. Being pregnant with twins, I was able to start my maternity leave early. Kent had been promoted to manager around that time, perhaps in recognition of his hard work. But with his new responsibilities, he started coming home later and using work as an excuse.
Hey, can't you come home a bit earlier? It's getting hard to move around with my big belly, I said. His response was, "What can I do? It's work. I'll do my best once they're born."
Thankfully, Deanna, who lives nearby, often came to check on me. I always thought Deanna was a quiet person, but she talked a lot when it was just the two of us.
"How are you feeling, Carol? I made this because you said it was delicious before. Eat up. And I bought some daily necessities for you. Deanna, you're really a godsend."
Thanks to Deanna, I could lead a calm life during my pregnancy. I'm truly grateful even now. Later, I gave birth to fraternal twin boys via C-section. My eldest son, Rui, was 5 pounds, and my second son, Ray, was 4.5 pounds. Kent and I had already decided on their names together. I was discharged from the hospital after about a week, but the boys couldn't come home due to their low weight. On the day of my discharge, Kent came to pick me up. I was depressed, but he said, "Think of it as a chance to rest for a while. Let's be positive." Frustrated by Kent's off-the-mark comment, my irritation peaked when I got home.
"What is this?"
The house was a mess, the table cluttered with stuff, and the sink overflowed with dishes.
Even Kent realized it was bad and said, "I was going to clean up, but I've been busy with work, and on my days off, I'm too tired and sleep in, and I thought, you're coming back today anyway."
Realizing he expected me to clean up made me more sad than angry.
"Kent, didn't you say you'd step up once the kids were born?"
"Of course, I'll help with anything I can."
"But the kids are still in the hospital, so I thought it's okay to start helping once they're back,"
he said with a careless laugh. I just told him to look up how to care for someone postpartum and locked myself in the bedroom. A few minutes later, he quietly opened the door. "Sorry, Carol. I looked up how to care for someone after giving birth. You're right, I shouldn't make you strain yourself. Rest easy today. Starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can." With a smug face, he left the room.
What does he mean by starting tomorrow, you'll just do as much as you can?
It seemed Kent still didn't understand the meaning of rest. Perhaps I could have relied on my parents, but my brother and his wife lived there, and their eldest child was a student preparing for exams then.
When I told about my pregnancy, that night my sister-in-law messaged, "Are you planning to come to our parents' home after giving birth? Please keep it short if possible, since our eldest son is studying for exams."
I might have said the same if I were in her shoes. My mom was supposed to help me after my discharge, but she fractured her leg falling down the stairs the day before I was discharged. Considering Kent's behavior today, he probably won't be of much help. But the next day, my savior appeared.
"Congratulations on your discharge, Carol. When Kent told me you needed help, I wondered what happened. Rely on me for anything," she said.
To me, Deanna seemed like a goddess. Since I needed to breastfeed, Deanna drove me to the hospital every day.
Once I asked Kent to deliver pumped breast milk to the hospital because of feeling unwell, he said, "Me? Impossible, I'll be late for work. I'll tell Mom." And left for work quickly.
Kent always left inconvenient tasks to others.
Kent will surely do more once childcare starts, and I need to try harder too.
At that time, I still had the energy to think that way. A month after giving birth, my son's discharge was arranged. I was overjoyed at the thought of finally living together. On the day we brought the boys home, Louis visited and said, "This one is quite small, is he okay?" Compared to him, this one looks healthy. He ignored quiet and smaller Ray, only doting on Rui.
What's with this old man? Enough already.
I prayed the boys wouldn't get attached to Louis. Taking care of twins was far beyond my imagination. Feeding was doubled and they rarely slept at the same time. One of them was always awake. When both cried at the same time, I almost panicked. Deanna came almost every day, and my mom, whose leg was getting better, also visited regularly. Without these two mothers, I might have collapsed.
Deanna and Mom seem to get along well. We'll take care of Rui and Ray, so you should sleep while you can. They insisted, pushing me into the bedroom.
I managed during the day, but the problem was at night. Kent, who said he'd do his best once the kids were born, hadn't changed. He still came home late, and by the time he arrived, I had finished bathing the babies. The most he did was admire the twins' cute sleeping faces.
They're so cute.
He often made them wake up by touching their cheeks. When they woke up and cried, the other would join in.
Hey! They just fell asleep after so much effort. Don't mess it up. I snapped. You get angry like that again. Carol, you've been too irritable since having the babies. Remember, they can see you. He joked. Huh. It's your fault.
I became upset as Kent complained and quickly headed for a shower. Kent ate the meals I made whenever he wanted to eat, and took a bath I prepare whenever he wanted to take. And he slept and woke up at his own convenience. Even when the kids cry, he never seems to hear them and remains asleep. It's the same with diaper changing. He does change them if I ask, albeit awkwardly. However, when it's poop, he stubbornly refuses, exclaiming, "Whoa! Carol, come here." Rui pooped, so change his diaper quickly.
What does he mean by doing his best? Is this it? That can't be true, right?
I felt like I wasn't co-parenting with Kent. I would have collapsed if it weren't for Mom and Deanna. When I was pregnant with the twins, I begged Kent many times to take paternity leave. I asked, but it's difficult.
It's a pity, but I'll do my best when I get home from work,
he said. And this was the result. Furthermore, Kent told me,
at my company, no man takes parental leave. The wives of my colleagues make lunch every day. Professional moms are different, huh?
Before giving birth, I used to make Kent's lunch every day. I didn't have time for that since the twins came, so he had to buy lunch or eat out. Kent seemed annoyed by this, and I felt his sarcasm. By then, my love for Kent had completely cooled. Could anyone still love their husband in this situation? Maybe it's time for a divorce. He hardly contributes to household chores, just complains. But raising twins alone, that's unsettling. I hesitated to take the step towards divorce, especially with the twins still so small. Meanwhile, the boys grew steadily. Rui remained a bit smaller but eagerly drank both formula and breast milk. By 6 months, they could almost grow to average size. We started weaning. I learned recipes from Mom and Deanna, read books, and tried many things myself. Despite being twins, their food preferences were different, which was fun. Looking at the mushy baby food, Kent said, "Wow, how can they eat this? Looks disgusting." While saying that and feeding our son, I intervened.
Enough. I'll take over. To which he replied, "Why can you only talk to me like that? I'm doing my best in my own way. Carol, you like a cruel wife. Be a little nicer to me, I feel suffocated."
His words brought tears to my eyes. Is it my fault? I'm trying hard, aren't I? That night, I thought to myself, maybe I had been too harsh on Kent. I felt a little remorse. To apologize, I made lunch for Ken the next day for the first time in a long time. Kent seemed happy and a little embarrassed.
I made Kent lunch today, he was shyly happy about it.
I told Deanna, who was at my house, and she responded, "Thanks for doing that for Kent, but you should let him buy his own lunch. He should be making it himself." We laughed about how Lewis would dislike that, and just then, my mobile phone rang.
"Maybe it's a thank you call for the lunch?"
Excited, I answered.
"Where's the fork?"
Kent's yelling echoed in my ears.
"Sorry, what?" I responded. "Hey, cruel wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The fork. There's no fork in the lunch. Are you telling me to eat with my hands? What a ridiculous cruel wife." As I fell silent, he said to me, "Is this payback for yesterday? You really have a bad attitude. Bring me a fork in 5 minutes."
I felt bad about forgetting the fork. But did he need to be told this much? At that moment, I stopped seeing this man as family. Maybe it was too late, even by my own standards.
My anger welled up and it reached its peak. Without regard to Deanna being next to me, I shouted, "Shut up. If there's no fork, then eat with your hands. Even a baby can eat with their hands, why can't you?" Perhaps Kent didn't expect such a reaction and said, "We're getting a divorce, that's it with you, the cruel wife. We'll talk when I get home." And hung up.
I glanced at Deanna, who had an unexpected reaction. Kent came home very early that night, perhaps finishing work at a normal time. Behind him, Lewis and Deanna were there. Lewis sat down arrogantly and demanded,
"Hey, coffee!"
Thinking it was probably the last time I'd see this uncle, I silently made coffee.
"I've heard most of it from Kent. Aren't you being a bit too selfish?"
Lewis spoke to me arrogantly as usual, laughing at the idea of a housewife being so bossy.
"I was an office worker, just on parental leave, but I didn't feel like explaining." I said, "Really? I just get so irritated with Kent, who shows no responsibility or awareness as a father after the birth of our children."
Lewis sighed. "Men are like that."
I was the same.
"It can't be helped.
You're the reason we couldn't have grandchildren for so long, yet you haven't apologized to our family?" Huh? What did this man just say? So that's why he was so harsh on me.
Kent looked uneasy next to Lewis, who demanded an apology.
Really? That's a lie from Kent. The issue lies with your son.
I pulled out Kent's medical results and slammed them in front of Lewis. Even Lewis was taken aback and accused him.
"Carol, I'm sorry. I said those things, but I don't really want a divorce. I apologize for lying about the test results. I just couldn't believe them."
Kent apparently didn't want a divorce. He probably thought bringing Lewis and Deanna would work in his favor. I quietly handed him the divorce papers.
"A joke, right? Rui and Ray are still so young. You want to make them poor fatherless children? Better fatherless than with a father like you. You're always lying, Kent. You never change, always saying you'll do your best. When have you done? I'm tired too. Let me be free. And, you think I don't know anything?"
Kent looked confused.
"A lot of people at your company heard today's call. It's embarrassing. A colleague called me, worried. That's when I heard about the parental leave. You said you didn't need it, all lies." Concerned about me with the twins, Kent's boss had asked to him, "How long will you take for maternity leave?" Despite that, Kent had declined.
It was also revealed that Kent could have left work on time on some days, but he deliberately stayed late. Kent was silent and downcast at my words. Seeing this, Lewis intervened.
"Well, men have their own circles. Supporting that is a wife's role. You'll understand eventually."
He looked at Deanna as if seeking agreement. Deanna scoffed at Lewis.
"That's something I'll never understand, no matter how many years pass."
Lewis was taken aback by her reaction. Ignoring Lewis, Deanna said, "Kent, let Carol go. Make sure to pay proper child support." That's the least you can do. Not expecting this from Deanna, Kent looked helplessly at Louis. Then, Louis suggested something outrageous. If you divorce, leave one child here.
The bigger one, yes, that one.
Pointing at our eldest son, Rui. I was so angry that I almost hit Louis.
Then Deanna slapped Louis, shouting, "Enough already!" Louis was shocked and exclaimed, What have you done? We might as well divorce too."
As if waiting for these words, Deanna said, "Really? Thank you. Then please sign here." I've already done. 2 divorce papers were laid out on the table. The 2 men remained silent and seemed to be thinking. This wasn't supposed to happen. After Kent yelled at me on the phone, Deanna chuckled and said, "Kent grew up watching Louis treated women poorly. A foolish husband and a foolish son, pathetic. Carol, I've reached my limit too. The end of a man who can't do anything alone must be ridiculous, don't you think? Let's make them regret it." I felt a bit scared seeing Deanna's face, but realized she must have endured worse treatment for a long time.
Kent and Louis filled out the divorce papers while saying, "Regret this," and handed them over as if throwing them.
They frustrated me till the end, but Deanna and I were finally free. I returned to my parents' home. My brother's family had moved nearby, so their children could attend a local high school. Deanna, having received her share of the assets, moved close to my parents' home. She's become quite close with my mom and visits her often. The boys are happy, loved by their 2 grandmothers. As for Kent, the fork incident became widely known at work, and he lost respect, especially among female colleagues, being whispered about as a women's enemy. He's unlikely to engage in office romance again. Due to his poor domestic skills, he's been demoted from his manager position, as customers complained about his sloppy, unhygienic appearance. His diet has deteriorated, and he's gained weight. Feeling uncomfortable, he recently requested a transfer. By the time I return from parental leave, Kent won't be at the same company. Similarly, Louis's personal life suffered. He tried to make this incident a laughing matter with his superiors over drinks, but the room fell silent.
"The way I see it, a man who can't treasure his family isn't worth much,"
the CEO personally told him, so Louis's remaining months until retirement will be uncomfortable. He'll likely spend his old age alone. Both got what they deserved. Deanna started part-time work at a nearby grocery store and seems to be enjoying her days. I'm happy for her. The twins, Rui and Ray, are about to celebrate their first birthday. A few days ago, the 2 of them started walking at the same time. I was so moved that I couldn't help but burst into tears.
They have different food preferences, but they like the same toys and are now playfully fighting over them, saying ah.
Watching them, I vowed to be a strong mother.